Miss R, and we're going to talk about structure function today. I have here a bobcat skull, and we know a bobcat is a predator because when we look at it head on, we see both eyes. We'll see the contrast in a prey skull in just a second. We can also see an important structure in this predator when we look at the teeth. There's some big teeth here for grabbing onto prey. And you can see that the teeth here are sharp and for grabbing and tearing meat into chunks. This is not a plant eater. As a bobcat, it hunts larger mammals and eats them. So let's look at one of its prey. This is a whitetail that has some different features than the bobcat skull. The eyes are primarily on the side of the head instead of the front of the head because the deer needs to look out for predators. You can see it can see a wide angle around its head, and on the other side as well. You can see that eyes on the side of your head are better as a prey animal because you have a wider range of view and you can look for things that are trying to get you. The teeth are also different on a prey animal. This is primarily a plant eater, and you can see that the teeth are flatter and they're for grinding plants as well. The front teeth are also different than on the bobcat. There's just two front teeth on the bottom jaw, and they're for nipping off vegetation, not for grabbing big hunks of meat like the bobcat. The deer also has a long nose. It has a great sense of smell, so it can see what's coming. So deer are prey animals. They have eyes on the side of their head, and they have very different teeth than bobcats. They're flatter, and they're for grinding plants. Let's take a look at a couple other animals that have structure function, interesting structure functions. This, it's a little bit shiny because it's varnished. This is a black bear. And you can see that the black bear teeth are not quite like ours, but they're a little bit more like ours, and that they have some sharp teeth in front. We don't have teeth this big and this sharp in front of our mouths, but we do share something in common with bears. We're omnivores. So we have flat grinders in the back of our jaw. These are your molar teeth, we call them. And then we have kind of sharper teeth in front. You can see that these might look a little bit like your front teeth. And so since bears are omnivores, they eat some of the same things we do. They eat both plants and animals. And so they have teeth a little bit more like ours than, say, a deer or a bobcat. Bear primarily have eyes in front of their head. If you look at a deer or a bear here, you can see that their eyes are facing you if you face them. Bears are pretty big, so they don't have to worry too much about predators, something eating them. So they're more looking out for what they're going to eat, so their eyes are in front. And that's some structure function of a bear. You can see they have a pretty big nasal cavity because they're smelling to see what's going on. They're looking for food, but they're also looking for potential mates and other things with their awesome noses. Other structure function, and this is a rodent, so it's a plant eater. It has big teeth that grow out of both its jaw and its skull. They're constantly being worn down, so they're constantly growing. You can see that the teeth are like deer teeth here. They're flat and wide for grinding plants, specifically bark, which is what the beaver eats. Here's the beaver skull. You can see this tooth is kind of, this is what's out, and then this is what's going to keep replacing the tooth as it's worn down. If rodents don't keep eating, their teeth will just keep growing and growing and growing, and it'll grow back into their skull. So you need to keep your pet rodents chewing on something. Here are another set of the beaver's teeth here. We don't get a good view of the beaver's eyes here because it's only a partial skull. I believe it was found in the woods. And you can see that the beaver has a pretty good field of view here because it is a plant eater. It is a mammal, a prey mammal. Let's look at another rodent here really quickly. Here's a vole. It's a tiny mammal. You can see the small tooth here. I'll get it out on the black. That's a small tooth and it's up inside the head of the vole. You can see the other tooth right there. I'll tip it up. And you can't see the teeth here, but they are flat grinding teeth. And you can see, since this is a very, very tiny little thing, its eyes are definitely on the side of its head, and it's got a pretty good field of view because this definitely could be prey for a lot of different animals. We've looked at mammals here. Let's look at a bird quickly. This is an owl, and you can see the owl doesn't have teeth as we would think of them as teeth. Sorry, this is a bit of a messy skull. By the way, none of these animals were killed for their skulls. All the skulls were found, or the dead animal was found and its skull was processed by insects. And then this one was not very processed. This was a gift from a student, but thank you, students, for giving us interesting things that we can share with our classes. You can see this bird has a very different skull than some of our mammals, and the eye sockets are really, really big. Owls have very large eyes because they have to see in the dark, and you can see that the owl is definitely got its eyes in the front of its head. It does have a pretty wide range of view, but that's because it's an owl and it has really big eyes. You can see the nasal cavity here as well. Let's look at one more interesting animal. Here's a turtle shell, and you can see the vertebra. We haven't talked about vertebra, but that's the backbone. It's fused right into the part that holds the turtle shell. This is the part of the skeleton. The shell actually rides on top of here, and they're like fingernails. The pieces of shell kind of are like fingernails that are stuck to this part of the skeleton. Here's the skull of the turtle. And it's got some interesting features here. This is a snapping turtle, and you don't really see teeth, but it has a very sharp jaw. And that jaw is so sharp. My grandfather, he got bit by a snapping turtle, and unfortunately they had to kill the animal to get it off his hand. He got his hand stuck in here, and the turtle would just not let go, so they had to bring him, and his friends had to carry the turtle from the river near his house all the way home, and his dad had to kill the turtle to get it to let go of my grandfather's hand. So my grandfather's not a big fan of snapping turtles. He still has a scar. Snapping turtles, you can see that their eyes are definitely in front of their heads. They're hunters, they're predators, they're looking for their next fish, or maybe my grandfather's hand to take a bite out of. But you can see that this turtle here is a significant predator, and you don't want to mess with them. All right, our last, this is obviously not a mammal, it's a dragonfly, but dragonfly skeletons are very different than the other skeletons we've looked at. Dragonflies have a skeleton on the outside. It's called an exoskeleton, or exo means outside. And so you can see that they have kind of a tough, crunchy outer coating on them, and that's their skeleton if you're an insect. That skeleton is made